Hello and welcome to what was it? Safer Work PMQs. Hello, welcome. We're just about to get started. Is Graham having a siesta? No, I'm not. I'm here. Just pressed the wrong button when I started there. But never mind. We're here now, and that's the main thing. Should we get into it? This is the last Prime Minister's questions of the parliamentary term. It's the last one before they go on their summer jollies. And it's the first one in 3 weeks that has actually been attended by the Prime Minister. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's head over to the House of Commons. Savage Javid. There we go. Hello, Mr. Bowling Ball. Will the Prime Minister list his official engagements? Go on, what are you up to? Maybe put my mic in front of me. That'll help. Oh, an official apology. That's unusual. I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares. Oh, do you know what? Sound would be nice.
Mr. Speaker, can I associate myself with the remarks the Prime Minister just
Sound
made?
is nice, isn't it?
Mr. Speaker, in the UK, every 90 minutes, someone sadly takes their own life.
First question.
Indeed, for in this country, for men under the age of 50 and for women under the age of 35, this is now the biggest killer. When I was the Secretary of State for Health, I met many brave families and campaigners, and I committed to them that the government would publish a comprehensive, cross-departmental suicide prevention strategy. That was over a year ago, and still no strategy. Now, I know that my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, cares as deeply about this issue as I do.
Well, why
We've
can't he do
discussed it
something?
many times. And can I ask him, please, if he would commit his government to publishing this strategy within days of Parliament's return from the summer recess?
Mr. Speaker, when someone takes their own life, the effect on their family and friends is devastating. And I know the loss of my right honourable friend's own brother was an enormous source of pain for him. I want to reassure him that we are actively addressing suicide rates through our national suicide prevention strategy, backed by funding, and also particularly rolling out 100 suicide prevention voluntary community and social enterprises. But
you have an MP, Brendan Clark-Smith, who took the piss out of someone praising the Samaritans. The Samaritans, that's in your government, well, in your party. In your party, Brendan Clark-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, Labour in government was proud to repeal the ban against LGBT plus people serving in our armed forces. Yep. And today we strongly welcome this apology from the Prime Minister
Tories didn't.
as a recognition of their historic mistreatment.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent Ken Wright was a proud RAF serviceman, forced to leave the job he loved simply because he was gay. I'm delighted he is here today to witness this apology. And whilst we cannot right the wrongs of the past, the government should now act on the recommendations of the Etherton Review to fix the lives broken by the ban. It's what LGBT plus veterans deserve. Mr. Speaker, I also know the whole House will want to send our very best wishes to the Lionesses as they start their World Cup campaign this Saturday. Let's hope they continue the brilliant success they had in the Euros. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister took office 9 months ago, the NHS waiting list had 7.2 million people on it. What's the number today?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reason that the NHS waiting lists are higher today than they were then, after actually being stable for the first few months as we put in place new initiatives, is very simple. And that's because the NHS has been disrupted by industrial action, Mr. Speaker.
Really? Oh, it's strikers.
We put very clear plans in place to bring down waiting lists in urgent and emergency care, in primary care, in ambulances, and outpatients and electives. Those plans were working and will continue to work.
2 hours to get a friend of mine an ambulance back in December.
We do need to end the industrial action. So I'd ask the honourable gentleman, if he does care about bringing
that
the
was because of
waiting list
industrial
down,
action.
does he agree with me that consultants and junior doctors should accept the pay deal that the government offered?
Mr. Speaker.
What's happening?
The Prime Minister likes to get away early. The more that you stop me getting on with the questions, the more I'm going to keep him here. So it's up to you how long you want the
Prime Minister ducking out of Prime Minister's questions there.
Mr. Speaker,
away early.
I'm sure the whole House is pleased that he's graced us with his presence today. But we don't get any more answers when he's here than when he's not.
Yeah, that's true.
He knows the answer. 7 million people currently on the waiting list. Prime Minister, that's the highest it's ever been. It means that since he stepped foot into Downing Street, 100,000 people have been waiting in daily agony for things like hip and knee replacements, while he boasts. Has he figured out why, after 9 months, dozens of gimmicks, umpteen broken promises, his government is failing more patients than ever before?
Strikes and worse under Labour. Yeah.
Again,
I was going to say
I
delivering
don't think
now.
we heard an answer to the question. Right, so...
What? It's not their question. It's not their question. It's Prime Minister's questions.
You holding up proceedings, Prime Minister.
It's not Prime Minister's questions. Sorry, it's not Prime Minister. It's not future Prime Minister's questions.
Earlier this year, what we have seen actually is that our plans were beginning to work. Ambulance and waiting times down from an hour and a half over Christmas to around half an hour.
They were an hour and a half under your government.
Waiting 1.5
Bragging about it taking less than...
progress on GPS.
Sorry, just have to stop him there. Bragging about the fact that it did take an hour and a half to get an ambulance and now it doesn't is really nothing to brag about. It took an hour and a half to get a frickin' ambulance. That's an average. Some people waited a lot longer than that.
Access. Now, all those things, all those plans we put in place, all the funding, all the extra ambulances, the extra discharge, all starting to make a difference, all held up by one very simple fact: industrial action in the NHS.
Piss off. So I'm just going to jump into Skylar Jones's point there. 13 years, in caps, of pain, cuts and austerity. How dare he blame the strikers, stressed and fed up health workers who are responding to their austerity cruelty. I couldn't agree more, Skylar.
Again, I'll give him a second chance. If he really wants to get people the health
second chance. It's not his
want,
questions. Not these the opposition questions.
With me that those doctors should accept the recommendations of the independent pay review body.
It's not. It's not though, is it?
It will be a bad time to get thrown out. It's 6 weeks, I think, long and hard. Can I just say to the Prime Minister, it's opposition questions, it's Prime Minister's questions.
Yes. That's what I just said.
Mr. Speaker, I think with his time away, he's slightly forgotten how this works.
Future Prime Minister questions.
And he talks about his plans. He talks about
Angela
his plans,
was right, they are
his
scum.
NHS staffing plan.
I blame the NHS.
Order. It might be the last one before recess, but I'd just say to somebody,
it is like
if
school,
they really
isn't it?
want to take and go early, it will be very tempting to ensure that we do it. But think long and hard before you do. Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. He talks about his plans. He doesn't need to lecture me on that. On the NHS staffing plan, he nicked it from Labour. It's the same old story. They mess up the NHS and look to Labour to fix it.
Yep.
Come the election, the country will be doing the same. Yep. The difference is that, unlike us, he hasn't said how he'd pay for his workforce plan. Now's his chance. Where's the money coming from?
Come on, lads. Answer the question.
Mr. Speaker, not only is the NHS long-term workforce plan fully funded, it was welcomed.
Fully funded.
It was welcomed.
Fully funded.
It was welcomed by not one, not two, but by 43 different NHS stakeholders, Mr. Speaker. But no, he talks about our plans and are they making a difference? Well, let's just look. Let's just look in urgent and emergency care. Our plans mean that we'll put 800 more ambulances on the road, 5,000 more beds, faster discharge, more community care. That's why the Royal College of Emergency Medicine described it as significant and that it will undoubtedly improve conditions. But that's why, Mr. Speaker, what have we seen? A&E waiting times in England, the best in 2 years, Mr. Speaker. While Mr. Speaker, and they won't like this, while the NHS has the worst waiting times in the country in Wales, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
NHS with National Health Service Wales.
The workforce plan was fully costed. I've never seen the Chancellor more bewildered. It's less than a year since his party crashed the economy with their unfunded spending commitments, and he hasn't learned a thing. So let me ask it another way. Is his uncosted spending coming from more tax rises, more cuts, or is it just the latest promise to fall from the Tories' magic money tree?
Mr. Speaker, as I and the Chancellor set out, the plan is fully funded. He'll see that at the autumn statement. But I am pleased. I am pleased he's now interested in fiscal responsibility, because that is very welcome, Mr. Speaker. Because there's an opportunity for us to make sure that this is true conviction. We've just had, Mr. Speaker, in the last week, we've had the recommendations of independent pay review bodies, including for the NHS. Now, I believe the right thing to do was to accept those independent recommendations, but that involves taking difficult and responsible decisions to deliver those pay rises without fueling borrowing, inflation, taxes and debt. But on this crucial issue, Mr. Speaker, while his MPs are back on the picket lines...
You're delivering something. Quite rightly on the picket lines against your government.
He simply refuses to take a position. It's the same.
He's not refusing to take a position.
He should stop
They
taking
support the unions.
inspiration from his friends outside and unglue himself from the fence.
His friends outside? What, you mean like normal people? Labour are funded by unions. They support the unions against your horrible, cruel diktats.
Mr. Speaker, in that burst of nonsense, what you didn't hear was a single word about how he's going to be paying for it. Labour's NHS workforce plan is fully funded by scrapping the non-dom status that he so adores. You know the one, that non-dom...
Order. I think one or two of you have asked to catch my eye. You're not going the right way. Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labour's workforce plan is fully funded by scrapping the non-dom status that he so adores. You know the one, the non-dom tax thing, as he calls it, that allows some of the wealthiest people in the country to avoid paying tax here. Is that loophole so important to him that he'd rather have billions in unfunded promises than simply making billionaires pay what they owe?
Mr. Speaker, the same policy that has paid, I think, for 5 different things at this point. I think, Mr. Speaker, everybody knows that I'm a fan of doing maths to 18, but the honourable gentleman makes a very strong case for doing maths all the way to 61, quite frankly. When it comes, Mr. Speaker, but when it comes to the substance of the plan, because it's important we address this, right? I am aware, actually, and I will say this. He did set out some proposals to train more staff. The problem is, Mr. Speaker, that's all he did. Our plan is much more comprehensive and it's much more impactful.
You've been in charge for 13 years.
Not only will we train more staff.
You've been in charge for 13 years.
This is important substance, because I acknowledge the part of the opposition.
You've been in charge for 13 years.
13
years.
You
13 years.
Also have to set out plans as we did to retain
13
more
years.
staff. And you also crucially have to set out plans to how you reform the NHS so that you can have a more productive
what a
NHS.
joke.
And that is the difference between us, Mr. Speaker. He is only
You've been in charge for
focused on the
13 years, Labour
superficial
hasn't.
headline.
That's a
We're
bit
getting
of a
on
difference.
and doing the actual reform.
No, you're not.
Mr. Speaker, if he's so good at maths, he'd know I'm 60, not 61. I don't know whether the Prime Minister's found time to visit Hillingdon Hospital during the recent by-elections, where the wards have had to close, staff are working in appalling conditions, and patient safety is at risk. And that's simply a snapshot of the wider problem. This week, the National Audit Office set out in detail what everyone already knows. The government's hospital programme has, shall we say, some gaps in it.
Yes.
So can the Prime Minister
40 new
confirm
hospitals.
that,
Absolute
apart from the
bullshit.
fact that there aren't 40 of them, and the fact that most of them aren't new,
Yeah.
and that many of them aren't even hospitals, everything's going fine with the 40 new hospitals?
Mr. Speaker, not only are we
But
going
Labour
to
will be
deliver
worse.
on our manifesto commitment to build 40 new hospitals across the country by 2030? We're not just stopping there, Mr. Speaker, because
Liar.
we're also delivering 100
Delivering.
hospital
Delivering!
upgrades
Woo!
across the
Got a
country,
delivering one.
and
It's a
crucially,
bingo.
100
That's a bingo.
over 100 new community diagnostic centres to speed up
Yeah, Skylar.
treatment for people,
13 years.
including, Mr.
13
Speaker, in the
years.
Deputy Leader's
13 years.
constituency,
13
the
years.
Shadow Work and Pension Secretary's constituency, the Energy Secretary, the Justice Secretary, the Attorney General's constituency. That's how committed we are, Mr. Speaker. But look, let me end on this, because he mentioned
Sunak's
Leiden Hospital,
response is-
he mentioned Uxbridge.
very,
I tell you what,
very
I want
childish.
to help the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. I want to make sure that not only can they get to work, but they get the care they need. Why on earth does he want to charge them £12.50 every
really
time
good
they
point.
visit their GP and hospital?
What? It's your
Mr.
policy?
Speaker, there was welcome news this morning of
Where were the
inflation
riots?
falling by higher than expected.
Oh, yeah,
Businesses in my
wow.
constituency
So
are
it's,
trying
what
to
is it
plan
now?
their pricing for
7.9?
next January, and they're struggling because of the proposals to introduce the extended producer responsibility, and they don't yet have the information on how much it will cost or how it will work. So would the Prime Minister look at pausing and resetting that programme? So what we don't see in January is price rises in our supermarkets without the consequent reduction in packaging and increase in recycling that we all want to see.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for the question. This is something that has been raised with me
7.9%.
by those in the industry. Now, we are committed to protecting the environment and delivering on our net zero targets, but DEFRA are continuing to engage closely with manufacturers, retailers and packaging companies on the precise design of the scheme. And I know that ministers will continue to keep this House and my honourable friend updated.
Leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Hey, in like Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, the two-child benefit cap, as introduced by the Conservative Party, has left
gonna have a go at Labour here.
250,000 children living in poverty. So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he take comfort in knowing that the heinous legacy of that policy will no longer just be protected by Conservative members, but by Labour members too?
So they've gone in for the two-child
Mr. Speaker,
policy.
I welcome the Labour leader's newfound support for our policy, even though he previously committed to a different approach. But what I would say to the honourable gentleman, and indeed the Labour front bench, is that they don't have to worry too much, because given the Labour leader's track record, he's never actually kept a promise that he's made.
Behind Mr. Sunak there? Is it?
Stephen Flynn.
You know, out of the people
Mr.
versus...
Speaker,
Scott
voters
Pilgrim
in
versus the
Scotland
world.
are used to child poverty under the Tories. They almost expect it. But what they don't expect is child poverty support from the Labour Party. And if
See,
we
he's
look
having a
very
go at
closely
Labour here.
Right now, there
He's
is
having
a
a go at
shiver
Labour.
running along the Labour front bench looking for a
For a
spine.
spine. Blah, blah, blah. We've had that joke
Tell
already.
us something much bigger.
The SNP are really rattled by Labour.
In Scotland, Westminster offers them no
Can
real
you have a go at the
change.
Tories?
It offers them no real hope.
It's a bit weak, that. He tries to have a go at
Speaker,
Labour rather
the
than
best-
Sunak. He
the
could have
best
laid some
route
punches
out
on
of
Sunak
poverty
before the
is
summer.
through work, Mr. Speaker, and the best way to ensure that children do not grow up in poverty is to ensure that they do not grow up in a workless household. That's why we are focused on creating more jobs, with 200,000
Never
more
worked a day in
in
your
Scotland
life,
since
mate.
2010, and hundreds of
Just goes
thousands fewer
parties.
children across the United Kingdom
Stand up and speak.
growing up in a workless
I had a
household.
conversation.
We will
I had a
always
conversation.
continue to reduce
Can't
child
make a
poverty.
decision.
I don't want to see a single child grow
Not
up in
a single
poverty,
idea
and we
in
will
his
deliver
dizzy
that in
little
every
head.
part of the UK, including in Scotland.
He just has conversations, that's his job.
Thank you, Mr.
He's
Speaker.
worth over 700 million
Would my
pounds.
right honourable friend agree with
Having
me
conversations.
that if members opposite are in favour of illegal economic migration, then they should have the courage to say so, rather
Alright,
than
okay.
claiming that young men in their 20s and 30s arriving here from safe countries are actually asylum seekers.
Arriving here from safe countries. What a
My
lying
honourable
piece
friend
of
is
crap.
right that the party opposite don't have a plan to tackle illegal migration, and we saw that just in this last week, Mr. Speaker, that they voted.
I just want to pick up on a point that Audrey just made. Yeah, I know that Scotland's support of Labour absolutely collapsed over the last decade, but looking at the polls now, it is looking like they are going to actually manage to pick up more than one MP in the next election, and that's why the SNP are going after Labour just as much as they're going after the Tories. They've been doing this quite a few times in Prime Minister's questions and in Parliament in general. I understand why they're doing it. You know, it's politics. But for me, I just think, you know, I'd rather he just went after Sunak.
I think over 70 different times against our Stop the Boats bill. And that bill will make it crystal clear that if you come here illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed to a safe third country. That is the fair, compassionate and right way to deal with this problem, and that's what we believe in.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you. Just before we go to Caroline Lucas, thank you very much to Scoop them there for the £5 super chat.
Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's exactly a year to the day since UK temperatures hit a deadly 40 degrees for the first time, with 3,000 excess deaths last summer. Yet the Prime Minister's own climate advisers and businesses have said that his climate progress is worryingly slow. Now, he likes to claim that the UK is decarbonising more quickly than the rest of the G7, but since the Paris Agreement, that is simply not true. He likes to claim that it's not a top concern for the public. Well, recent polling shows that that's not true either. Experts, businesses and the public all want bolder climate action, but it isn't even one of his top 5 priorities. Can he tell us why not?
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Lady just makes a completely bizarre point. Because we move quicker and faster than everyone else, she thinks that
this guy travels around the UK in a private jet. The UK, tiny little country. He can get around on a train very easily. This guy here, private jet.
That somehow is something that we should now not be proud of. It's right that other countries are catching up. It's inevitable that they will have to decarbonise faster now to make up for the fact that over the past 2 decades they haven't followed our example. So I'm not going to take any lectures on this topic because our track record is.
Did anyone have "I'm not going to take any lectures" in their bingo?
A good one, Mr. Speaker. We have decarbonised faster.
Bullshit. I'm sorry, but you banned onshore wind farms in England. You have banned them. They are banned in this country. There's a moratorium on onshore wind farms. And you are giving money, our money, taxpayers' money, to oil companies to drill for more oil in the North Sea. Subsidies to billionaire oil companies. That's that's their track record.
Than everyone else, and right now we are making the right long-term decisions to make sure that we do transition to net zero, but do so in a way
without wind
that
farms.
brings people along with us and creates jobs in the process.
His predecessor said the most depressing thing she's ever seen is a field full of solar panels. That's honestly what she said. Not like, you know, the child having to be rescued by a police officer from their burning house in Greece because of climate change. No, that's not depressing at all. No, it's a field full of solar panels. Anyway, someone said in the chat they're going to miss they're going to miss Caroline Lucas, and I will as well. I think she's really good.
Bedfordshire businesses now have apprentices on the factory floor earning £48,000 a year on qualification, easily beating cost of living pressures.
Undertaker?
So what more can we do to get schools to promote apprenticeships to pupils and parents, as our colleges and institutes of technology
it looks like he's in the wrong aspect ratio, doesn't he?
Institutions.
Well, my honourable friend makes an excellent point.
Press the widescreen button.
That we are taking is to put all apprenticeships onto the UCAS system this autumn, which will make sure that they have parity of esteem in the classroom, increase information for parents and teachers.
Yeah, the Green Homes
but
grant.
at the same time, Mr. Speaker, as I announced earlier this week, we are
solar
clamping
panels
down
on every
on
new
university
build.
courses that fail to deliver
Subsidies
good outcomes.
for solar panels on every house.
What we should be doing is providing young people with the best opportunities for them to get on in life, and he's absolutely right that that should include apprentices.
Dame Diana Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why does the Prime Minister think that Sir Brian Langstaff, who chairs the public inquiry into infected blood, has reopened the hearings and has summoned before him the Prime Minister, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Leader of the House and the Paymaster General to answer questions next week?
Mr. Speaker, my thoughts remain with all those affected by this appalling tragedy. The infected blood scandal should never have happened, and that's why the public inquiry was set up by one of my predecessors. I've submitted written evidence to the inquiry, and am due to give oral evidence shortly, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment further.
There's an inquiry, inappropriate. Blah, blah,
Indeed,
blah.
Mr. Speaker.
I hate this trick. I hate it. Whenever they're asked a question about something horrible that they've done, they go, but there's an inquiry, can't answer the question.
800,000 people work indirectly or directly in our car industry, which accounts for 10% of our country's exports.
Yeah, and you guys, Tunbridge Wells, Brexit, yeah, you've destroyed it, mate. You've destroyed it. He's going to talk about this Gigafactory that's going to be built by Tata in Somerset, but the fact is that the government's probably allegedly spent a lot of our money getting that set up because no one was interested.
So I strongly welcome the £4 billion investment by Tata in a battery factory with the jobs associated with it. So will my right honourable friend build on that success and pursue a clear plan to get more gigafactories, including in the West Midlands, so we can capitalise on our lead in battery innovation and technology?
Our lead?
My
We have a lead.
We're
playing catch up. We haven't got one yet. Other countries have got several. Our lead. Our lead.
In the UK auto industry in this country's history. Billions of pounds, thousands of jobs, and it is a massive vote of confidence in the UK economy.
What's a little Whitfoot?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The NHS in England has just had its longest ever junior doctor strike, and consultants go on strike tomorrow for the first time in 50 years. Yet so far Scotland has had no NHS strikes. This isn't by chance, but because our Health Secretary and First Minister have kept working with the BMA to try and address the pay erosion faced by doctors since 2008.
No one's mentioned Boris Johnson's phone,
Workforce shortages are the biggest challenge facing healthcare, and the Prime Minister just mentioned the importance of staff retention. So does he really think refusing to even talk to health unions will stop doctors leaving the NHS?
Mr. Speaker, we did talk to health unions, but we also respected the independent pay review body process, Mr. Speaker, which is the right way to resolve these issues, and it means a typical junior doctor will see a 9% pay rise as a result of that deal, Mr. Speaker, combined with, as you mentioned, retention. Earlier this year, the government delivered the #1 ask of the BMA, which was to remove the cap on pensions tax that was specifically designed to retain senior doctors in the NHS. So the government has now done its bit, and I would urge the unions to please get back to the hospitals and treat your patients.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Thank you,
Oh
Mr.
God!
Speaker.
What?
Does my right honourable
piss
friend
off!
share my unease
Lying sack of
that a
crap.
bank that has the government as its largest shareholder should close the account of a senior opposition politician?
Oh, like you would give a shit if it was Corbyn or if it was Starmer.
To ensure that there is an inquiry into these circumstances, because the subject data access request makes it clear.
It's a private company. It's a private company.
Concerns political views that led to.
What are you talking about? It's a private company. You
agree with me that however much we may find,
I can't swear.
However much we may
You
find
haunted
tiresome,
broomstick.
Members of the opposition deserve bank accounts.
You could get one with Nat West.
Mr. Speaker,
you could get a normal bank account for normal people, but he's not a normal person, is he?
Anyone exercising their right to lawful free speech. Our new Financial Services and Markets Act puts in place new measures to ensure that politically exposed persons are being treated in an appropriate and proportionate manner. And having consulted on the payment services regulations, we are in the process of cracking down on this practice by tightening the rules around account closures. But in the meantime, any individual can complain to the Financial Ombudsman Service, which has the power to direct a bank to reopen their account.
That's sure.
Thank you very much. I know how it feels to be homeless, squatting from one place to another with your entire belongings in one single black bin liner. Hard-working families, including Bradford West, are at risk of homelessness because of a Tory mortgage bombshell and failing to legislate to protect renters. So can I ask the Prime Minister, apart from totally losing a grip on the whole situation, what is he doing to stop 500,000 people from becoming homeless?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, actually rough sleeping levels are about a third lower in 2022 compared to the peak in 2017. And since our landmark Homelessness Reduction Act came into force, over 600,000 households have successfully had their homelessness prevented or relieved, and we're investing £2 billion over the next 3 years to continue to tackle homelessness and rough sleeping.
Mark Francois.
The MP for 1864. Oh, Mark Francois! Oh my God, they're all coming out today.
Can I mention them again?
All the bloody yahoos.
We lost 457 personnel in Afghanistan killed.
Oh, you take the ring.
And several thousand who suffered life-changing injuries.
No, Frodo. No,
So I
Bilbo.
and some of my colleagues
You're
on
too
the
small
Defence
and too silly.
were absolutely stunned
Like you care.
to see a video
I got
posted
microphone
by
into
our
your
own
head.
chairman lauding the Taliban's governance of Afghanistan.
You're not a party, aren't you, mate?
They're still trying to identify and kill Afghan civilians.
Are you in the right party?
And also not
the blue on
mentioning
blue
the fact
attack
they
here.
don't like girls to go to school.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So can I make plain this was not in our name?
Oh, really?
And can I
It was,
have the
'cause you're
Prime
Tories.
Minister's assurance
You're basically the
that
British
this
Taliban.
silly and naive act was not in his name either?
Oh, okay. Go on then.
Mr. Speaker, I join
Go on.
with my honourable friend in paying tribute to our brave serving personnel and veterans and thank them for their service, as indeed we touched on earlier today. And we have repeatedly and will continue to repeatedly call out the human rights abuses that we see around the world, and he mentions rightly the prohibition on women being educated in Afghanistan, which is something we've spoken about in the past. But we will also continue to have dialogue with regimes. That doesn't mean that we consider those regimes to be legitimate or approve of their actions, but that is all part, as he will understand, of establishing normal.
Was it Lee Anderson? Was it who said
in
this?
Countries when the situation allows, but I'll very happily look into the specific case that he brought up with me.
Mr. Speaker, it's not just the adoption of the disgusting and heinous two-child benefit cap, it's the endorsement of a hard Brexit, the tuition fees, the immigration. Doesn't he agree that there's no real difference now between the two UK main parties? And isn't it time that we perhaps rearrange the furniture in this House and have them all on one big bench and perhaps retitle them that this is what you get from the UK party?
Unicorn.
Mr. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the question. And I will leave him and the Labour Party to debate the finer policies between them. But I would say on the substance, because it is important that actually the track record demonstrates that we are making a difference in reducing child poverty, Mr. Speaker. There are now 400,000 fewer children in poverty than there were in 2010 as a result of the actions of this government, noticeably moving
These are
their
about absolute
parents
poverty.
into
That
work
means they
because
haven't
it
got
has the single best
electricity
benefit
or
for those
water.
children. That is the right policy, and it's one
Doesn't
that we will
include children who
continue
are
to
going
deliver.
hungry because they haven't got food. Not included in absolute poverty.
Therapy is
It's relative
quackery
poverty.
packaged up by bigots seeking to promote their hate and
Bigots.
profit from it. On the
Bigots.
19th of January,
Hate.
the Minister at
Profit.
the Dispatch Box
You're a
promised
Tory.
to put forward a ban against conversion therapy and ensure that pre-legislative scrutiny was completed before the end of this parliamentary term. How does my right honourable friend plan to continue with that? But can I also welcome very much his statement from the floor today and thank those LGBT veterans who are here with us.
Bigots.
We are so grateful for your service.
You're in the party
and we
of
do this ban
bigots.
also
You
in
literally
your name.
in a party that is packed to the rafters with bigots. Oh my God! There's two Tories there basically saying our party's crap in it.
And we need to do everything we can to stamp it out wherever we see it. The Minister for Women and Equalities will continue to keep her and the House updated on our progress.
Barry Sherman.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Does the Prime Minister remember 7 years ago when he was a passionate supporter of leaving the European Union, along with his then best friend Boris Johnson? Is he aware that Sir John Major now says in every speech he makes that decision was catastrophic for the people of this country under standards of living, and also deeply damaging to our role, status and influence in the world?
Yeah, okay. Can't argue with that. Well done, Barry. He's just going to say...
Speaker, I would say gently to the honourable member, at the beginning of his question, you think he made the central point. It was 7 years ago, Mr. Speaker, and we need to move forward. I would just gently point out that we talked about what's happened since then, that since we left the single market, this economy has grown faster than Germany, France, and
No, it hasn't. That's an absolute lie. That's an absolute lie.
He talks about our standing on the world stage.
We left technically at the end of COVID.
Summit last week, but nobody
Not
can
the end
be
of
in
COVID, so
any
the first
doubt
year of
that the
COVID.
United Kingdom is highly respected on the world stage.
No, you've got rid of all that respect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now then, just last week,
Jesus
the leader
Christ,
of the
they're all out
opposition announced
today.
his new flagship policy.
30p Lee! Robert
This side of the House,
Oh,
but not
God.
so popular on that side
Have you
of
got
the
some
House.
beans
But
in your
Prime Minister,
pocket?
Could you please tell the House
Fruitcake.
when will the leader of the opposition jump off the bandwagon and be honest with the British public and tell them what he stands for?
What? Hey? What's that got? Is that a question to the Prime Minister?
Honourable friend,
Well,
friend is right.
sorry,
It would be one
I don't know if Lee Anderson's ever asked a question in Prime Minister's questions before. That was his big chance to ask a question, and that's what he asked. These people they're not right in the head, are they? I mean, you know,
thing. And I say, I welcome the leader of the opposition now supporting the government's policy, but I don't think anyone actually believes that he believes in what he's saying. And I think that is the critical.
yeah, they do. 'Cause that's why they're 20 points ahead in the
Neil Coyle.
polls.
Mr. Speaker, every single member of this House is required by law to confirm the true source of a donation before it is accepted or declared. So can the Prime Minister tell us if he followed all the rules all the time before he took £38,500 of free air travel on the 28th of April? And if so, why does his story keep changing about who paid?
Mr. Speaker,
He's a liar.
All donations are declared in the normal way, and as the honourable gentleman knows, if there are administrative changes to that, those are quickly corrected.
David Davis.
The Prime Minister, back to the question raised quite rightly by my honourable friend, the member for North East Somerset.
God.
The opposition politician he was referring to, of course, was Nigel Farage, whose bank account was closed, not because he was a PEP, not because of commercial reasons, but because his views did not align with
absolute
the
bollocks.
values of
He didn't have enough
Bank.
money in his account.
A thinly veiled
And even if it did,
discrimination,
so
a
what?
vindictive, irresponsible, and
Disgrace.
undemocratic action.
Sorry,
But in
dickhead.
addition-
Sorry, privately. I don't know if he's privately educated. Sorry, dickhead, but your political opinions are not a protected class. Your sexuality is. Your race is. Your religion is. You can't turn down someone for a bank account because they're a Christian or they're a Muslim or they're an atheist. That would be against the law. Your political views are not sacrosanct. You absolute clanging arsehole.
NatWest also disclosed confidential details about Farage's account to the BBC and lied about the commercial viability of his account, actions which ought to jeopardise its banking licence and should certainly worry NatWest's 19 million other customers. So he's told us what he's
Doesn't
going
bother
to
me.
do
He was
for the
offered-
future.
he was
But
offered an account in
there are many other
NatWest.
people in this circumstance. So can he require every bank with a British banking licence?
Just want to point out that banks can't actually, because of confidentiality clauses in agreements that they have to abide by under the banking regulations, they can't respond to any of this. So Farage can just make up any old crap that he wants to, and these horrible Tory bigots are just taking it as read. Plus, they have party privilege. What's it called? Parliamentary privilege here. So he can say whatever he wants. He can say something that is incredibly libelous. He can slander a private company like Coutts Bank. They can't do anything about it. They cannot do anything about it.
To inform the Treasury of all the accounts they've shut down for non-commercial reasons the last decade.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that the honourable gentleman has spoken to the Chancellor about this particular
This is
issue,
what
and
the
I know he'll
Tories-
continue to have the.
I'm sorry, I've got to stop it there. I just want to say, right, I'll come back to this in a moment, but just give me a moment of truth, as I like to call it. Let's face it, Nigel Farage is a millionaire. Anyone who has a bank account with Coutts is a millionaire. By definition, you have to have £3 million in your bank account to have a bank account with Coutts. They have had 2 questions now during Prime Minister's questions, the last Prime Minister's questions of this parliamentary term, about the fact that Nigel Farage got his bank account taken away from him by a private bank. So in the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War, in the highest inflation, in a situation in which people cannot afford their mortgages, people cannot afford their rent, people are having to choose between heating or eating, all that these millionaires in Parliament are bothered about is the fact that one of their fellow privately educated millionaires isn't allowed to bank with a bank that doesn't want him as a customer. That's their priority, their number one priority. And this is Britain in 2023. Oh my Lord. On with the show.
Those conversations. In the short term, having consulted on the payment service regulations, we do intend to crack down on this practice by toughening the rules around account closures. But in the meantime, the Financial Ombudsman Service is available for people to make complaints to.
Did they take his money off him?
I look forward to continuing the dialogue with him.
Did they take his money off him?
Final question, Conor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a father, the Prime Minister will know how precious
DUP
children
gets the last
are.
question.
Adam Watson, aged 9, and Poppy
Dear.
Ogle, aged 10, from my constituency, sadly lost their battle with childhood cancer just last year. Their homes are forever broken. Both families want to see a change in financial support for the 1,600 children diagnosed with cancer across the UK each year. Would the Prime Minister commit to meet with these families, to listen to their stories, and to review child DLA payments to commence immediately on diagnosis of childhood cancer, whether that be a terminal diagnosis or not? The 3-month wait for support is just too long. Surely this government can see fit to wrap its arms around these children and their families in their hour of need.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Lady for raising this issue. I can't imagine how difficult it is for families whose children are being treated for cancer and everything that will come along with that.
Someone have
I will
childhood
happily look
cancer
into
on
the
their
specific
bingo
issue that she
card
mentioned and
because,
get back to her in all haste, and she should know that she has my total support for helping and supporting families who are going through what will be an unbelievably difficult time.
Well done. What a
That
waste of a
completes
question.
Prime Minister's questions.
I don't think anything about it. Right, so that does indeed end Prime Minister's questions. So, oh my God, what did we learn? The Tories are just as bad as ever. I guess the SNP are a bit rattled by Labour. They never really used to have a go at Labour so much when they knew that they were safely going to have the lion's share of seats in Scotland. That doesn't look like that's the case going forward, and so I understand why they're doing that. But at the same time, I do feel like I wish that the attacks, because Stephen Flynn does some really great lines. I wish they were targeted towards the Prime Minister and his horrible group of shit kicker Tories that comprise our government and the largest major parliamentary party. You still have a 60-seat majority. I mean, they've lost 20 of them. They're going to lose a few more. No one mentioned the by-elections, which is taking place tomorrow in 3 different constituencies, including our old Prime Minister's ex-constituency, which may very well flip from the Tories to Labour for the first time, I think. No, you can't imagine because you're rich as balls. You never have to worry about your children being ill. Yeah, I know, but when they bring this up, and usually it's a Tory MP will stand up and say, cancer's bad, isn't it? Dementia's bad, isn't it? And the Prime Minister will go, yes, it's bad. We're doing everything we can. Just platitudes, just words. They don't actually have any policies whatsoever. And the fact that in that debate then, Starmer stood up and said, oh yeah, we are going to build those 40 hospitals. He said, we're going to build those 40 hospitals by 2030. He lives in cloud cuckoo land. He's just lying through his teeth. Does he have to go back and correct the record? I doubt it. Anyway, so a fair point on occasion by a DUP MP, but how can I expect this party destruction and economic illiteracy to do anything positive about cancer treatment for anyone? No, they won't. There's no profit in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, unless, I don't know, they're researching a cure for cancer, that could be quite profitable. But they don't even seem to want to do that. They pulled us out their Horizon Scientific Network across Europe. And I think New Zealand have joined Horizon now, so it's not even confined to the EU. It's not even confined to Europe. But we've left because we don't like anything to do with Europe, which is painful. And I'm hoping that when Labour get in, Horizon is restarted, we get back into Erasmus as soon as possible, and we start building our relationship with our continent again. Jabroni says, I love how Boris only came up once and no one is even bringing the pure contempt of justice with the inquiry or the amount of dodgy stalling regarding giving valuable necessary information. Indeed. Go on, attack Labour, go on, because that'll make our situation better, won't it? Well, Duke Vengeance, exactly. And look, you know my opinion on it, and I don't mind a bit of robust debate. I don't mind people criticising Labour because I do it myself. I can't really argue against that. But and the SNP, fair enough. They are a different political party to Labour, and they are going head to head with Labour in the next election, much so than the Tories, because the Tories don't really stand much of a chance in most of Scotland. Okay, fair enough. I get that. It's when it's people who are in Labour and elected representatives of Labour who are being overly critical of Labour before the next election. I find that a little bit, I don't know. I find that more difficult because, they are supposed to be, their number one task is to get Labour re-elected. Or elected, full stop. It's not even re-elected, is it? Get Labour elected as our government. And then let the floodgate to criticism open, as far as I'm concerned. And we'll see what happens in 2029. That shouldn't be done for profit, says Scoop. No, it definitely shouldn't. But it will be, because we live in this really stupid planet. Now, I've just made a video for you. I'll give you the link so you can watch it. It's called For Those in Climate Change Denial. I just made this morning between Morning Brew and whatever this is, Prime Minister's Questions. So if you want to watch that now, you are very welcome to. It's still unlisted, but I'm just about to make it public. I was waiting till the high definition version had finished processing, but it doesn't appear to have done that. But never mind. So there's a link there if you want to jump in there. Thank you very much for the super chats. Thank you very much for all your chats. I won't be back tomorrow. I will be in the chat, but it'll be Phil for Morning Brew. And so please join us for that. And yeah, like I say, thanks for the chat. Thanks for coming along. Honestly, I just want to say before we sign off Prime Minister's Questions until next September, thank you. Thank you for joining me on this, because I find it very cathartic to be able to watch this with people, similarly minded people who think that the Tories are bloody awful. And those people watching this who are SNP, people who are Greens, people who are Lib Dems, and people who are Labour. And I feel like we come together in this ideal of getting these bloody Tories out of office as soon as possible, because they are absolutely awful. They are the worst possible people to be in charge of this country at the worst possible time. And I'm sick of them. I'm absolutely sick of them. And if it wasn't for you guys in the chat here, agreeing in some respects to say, yes, these people are a bunch of clowns, I will find it a lot more difficult, and I really wouldn't want to have to sit there through Prime Minister's Questions. Phil will be putting up his usual video, his response to Prime Minister's Questions later today, so please check that out on his channel, which is a different bias. And like I say, he'll be back in the morning at 9:30 for Morning Brew. So thank you for everyone in the chat, thank you for the super chat, and just thank you in general for keeping me sane, somewhat saner than I otherwise would be through all of this absolute nonsense. So thank you very much, and I will see you on Friday, I think, if I don't see you before. But until then, take care, and I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.